Inspired by the last talker, I'm going to have a little song about internet porn. No, just kidding. The widespread use of internet porn is one of the fastest moving, most global experiments ever unconsciously conducted. Nearly every young guy with an internet access becomes an eager test subject. Canadian researcher Simon Lajeunesse found that most boys seek pornography by age 10, driven by a brain that is suddenly fascinated by sex. Now, users perceive internet porn as far more compelling than porn of the past. Why is that? Unending novelty. In this Australian experiment, it's not mere nudity, but novelty that gets arousal skyrocketing. Subjects watch 22 porn displays. See that spike? That's where the researchers switched to porn the guys hadn't seen before. What happened? Their erections and their brains fired up. Why all the excitement? Mother Nature likes to keep a male fertilizing willing females as long as any new ones are around. In that top line, the ram, he needs more and more time to mate with the same old ewe. But if you keep switching females, the bottom line, well, it's just not the same. He can get the job done in 2 minutes flat and keep going until he is utterly exhausted. This is known as the Coolidge effect. Without the Coolidge effect, there would be no internet porn. This old mammalian program, the Coolidge effect, perceives each novel female on a guy's screen as a genetic opportunity. To keep a guy fertilizing the screen, his brain releases the go-get-it neurochemical dopamine for each novel mate or image. Eventually, the ram will tire, but as long as the guy can keep clicking, he can keep going, and so will his dopamine. With internet porn, a guy can see more hot babes in 10 minutes than his ancestors could see in several lifetimes. The problem is he has a hunter-gatherer brain. A heavy user's brain rewires itself to this genetic bonanza, so his brain becomes associated with this porn harem. Such behaviors that are associated with this are being alone, voyeurism, clicking, searching, multiple tabs, fast forwarding, constant novelty, shock, and surprise. As one young guy once asked, are we the first generation to masturbate left-handed? Now, real sex, in contrast, is courtship, touching, being touched, smells, pheromones, emotional connection, interaction with a real person. Now, what happens when our guy finally gets with a real mate? Well, researchers don't know much about the effects of internet porn for several reasons. In 2009, when Lajeunesse tried to study porn's impact, he couldn't find any college-age males who weren't using it. So the first serious dilemma is that studies have no control groups. Now, this creates a huge blind spot. Imagine if all guys started smoking at age 10 and there were no groups that didn't. We would think that lung cancer is normal for all guys. Undaunted by his lack of non-users, Lajeunesse asked 20 male students, is internet porn affecting you or your attitudes towards women? Their answer, nah, I don't think so. But they've been using it for about a decade then, pretty much non-stop. This is like asking a fish what it thinks about water. Which brings us to a second problem. Now, researchers haven't asked porn users about the symptoms Zimbardo described in The Demise of Guys. Arousal addiction symptoms are easily mistaken for such things as ADHD, social anxiety, depression, concentration problems, performance anxiety, OCD, and a host of others. Now, healthcare providers often assume that these conditions are primary, perhaps the cause of addiction, but never really the result of an addiction. As a consequence, they often medicate these guys without really inquiring about if they have an internet addiction. So guys never realized that they could overcome these symptoms simply by changing their behavior. Now, the third problem is it's hard to believe that sexual activity can cause addiction because sex is healthy. But internet porn is not sex. Internet porn is as different from real sex as today's video games are from checkers. Watching a screen full of naked body parts won't automatically protect one from arousal addiction. In this Dutch study, here's the title, they found that, in fact, of all activities on the internet, porn has the most potential to become addictive. Here's why. This ancient program, the reward circuit, evolved to drive us towards natural rewards, such as sex, bonding, and food. As a consequence, extreme versions of natural rewards have a unique ability to capture us. For example, high-calorie foods or hot, novel babes give us extra dopamine. Too much dopamine, though, can override our natural satiation mechanisms. For example, give rats unlimited access to junk food, and almost all of them will binge to obesity. This is also why 4 out of 5 Americans are overweight and about half of those are obese. That is, addicted to food. Now, in contrast to natural rewards, drugs such as cocaine or alcohol only hook about 10% of users, whether they are rats or humans. This binge mechanism for food or sex was once an evolutionary advantage. In essence, it is getting it while the getting is good. Now, you can think of wolves packing away 20 pounds of meat per kill, or it's mating season and you're the alpha male. What if mating season never ends? All those hits of dopamine can tell your brain to do 2 things. First, they say, man, you have hit the evolutionary jackpot. Second, they kick in a molecular switch called delta phos-B. I know it's a fancy word, but dopamine kicks in delta phos-B, and that starts to accumulate in the brain's reward circuit. Now, with excess chronic consumption of drugs or natural rewards, this buildup of delta phos-B starts to alter the brain and promotes a cycle of binging and craving. If the binging continues, the delta phos-B builds up and it can lead to brain changes seen in all addicts. So the dominoes are excess consumption, excess dopamine, delta phos-B, brain changes. One of the first changes is a numb pleasure response. It kicks in, and so everyday pleasures really don't satisfy a porn addict. At the same time, other physical changes in the brain make the brain hyperreactive to porn. Everything else in the porn user's life is sort of boring, but porn is super exciting. Finally, his willpower erodes as his frontal cortex changes. I can't emphasize this enough. All addictions share these same brain changes and the same molecular switch that kicks them in, delta phos-B.
You liar! I haven't finished. Did this. Finish it. It's the perfect...
Now, scientists have used brain scans to measure these changes in drug addicts. Up here, these scans show a reduced pleasure response in drug addicts. These and several other changes have also been seen in gambling addicts, food addicts, very recently in video game addicts, and now in internet addicts. I apologize for filling up this slide with brain studies. Just notice the dates, but I want you to know that they exist. So far, all brain research points in only one direction. Constant novelty at a click can cause addiction. Now, we know this because when scientists examined former internet addicts, they found that these brain changes were reversing themselves. Unfortunately, none of these studies isolate porn users, but they do include them. Here's the game changer. At last, we have a group of guys who are no longer using internet porn. That's right, heavy users are voluntarily giving it up by the thousands. These guys are the missing control group in the great porn experiment. They're showing experts what changing one single variable can do. I call it the resurrection of guys, as opposed to the demise of guys. Now, before I continue, you probably want to know why any porn-loving guy in his right mind would give it up. 2 words: erectile dysfunction. Internet porn is killing young men's sexual performance. Now,